Hey everyone, how's it going? This week I'm going to share with you a little bit of my coming out story. So I was a lot less informed than Xander was, actually, like coming off the bat. I did have a very similar experience of knowing a little bit about trans people, like not like enough at all, but like knowing that like there were people who changed their gender. That was about the extent of it. And from the narratives I'd heard that like you were like born and then you like immediately like as a kid were like I'm a boy, like I'm a girl, meh, and like immediately just knew that you were trans. I mean, I didn't know. I was actually pretty fine being a girl my entire childhood. Part of it was that like being a girl was like a really broad definition for me. Like my mom was like, whatever you want to do, you can do, whatever. And my dad was like, I'd prefer it if you wore skirts, but like no one listened to him anyway. I love my dad. He's a little bit more conservative than my mom is. So I'd gone basically my entire childhood just like, I could be a girl and I could do all these boy things while being a girl, and like gender didn't freaking matter to me at that time. But then puberty hit, and that's when I realized that everything was wrong, and I was like, everything is wrong, everything is wrong, everything is wrong, and it was very much body-focused for me. So, like, my body is wrong. Like, the way my body is growing is wrong. The things that are happening to me physically are wrong. Wrong, 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 wrong. No, 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 no. But I just assumed that was, like, a normal part of being a girl, was just, like, having everything go wrong with your body and, like, hating all of it. So, that was high school. Senior year in high school, the way I figured out I was trans was a friend basically told me I was. It's sort of a long story, but the gist of it is, he at one point asked, would you ever get a sex change? Because that's all we knew that they were called. And I was like, well, I guess it depends on how much it costs. Which I learned is not the normal response to that question. So I was like, oh, and he's like, yeah, maybe you should look that up. So then I looked up sex change on Wikipedia, found out it was actually called sexual reassignment surgery, or SRS, and I was like, oh, this is a real thing. This is actually something that I could maybe possibly do. And then I learned about trans people through SRS, and so I thought that, like, the surgery was more than the identity, if that makes any sense. I don't know. So I thought I would have to wait until I, like, had money, and then I would get surgery, but, like, I could never be out or do anything before then. And so I went off to college like that, like, feeling, like, a little hopeful, but still, like, I'll never meet another trans person. How wrong I was. On the very first day of college orientation, there was a guy in my, advisory group who's super cool, and I was like, you're so cool, and he's like, I guess you're cool too, or like, maybe, I don't know. But anyway, so he asked me at one point, so what's your preferred pronoun? I was like, I don't know, and he's like, let's talk about this, and then he was like, I'm trans, are you trans? And I'm like, I don't know, is that okay? And he's like, you can be a boy right now. You can be a boy today. You don't have to have surgery, you don't have to do hormone, you don't have to even, like, present as male to come out as a trans man and, like, be, like, treated as a dude. And I was like, freaking mind-blowing. So, like, the next day I came out to everyone I just met at college, which was fun. And then about a month later, I called my parents on National Coming Out Day, and I was like, hey, and my mom picked up the phone, and she was like, great timing, we're right in between sets at your brother's marching band competition. What's up? You have 5 minutes. And I was like, I'm trans. I'm a boy. Don't think of it as losing a daughter. Think of it as gaining a son. And she was very confused, as she should have been. And so we talked the next day for about 2 hours, and she and my dad were on the phone, and they were both like, where did this come from? How do you know? This is all so sudden, blah, blah, blah. And for me, it wasn't sudden. But it was very hard for me to, like, articulate anything, because I still didn't know anything about being trans. I was just like, I think this, what, and just guessed. And so, like, for the first year actually being out, I just sort of, like, followed other trans people's examples, and had, like, sort of a really narrow point of view of, like, what it meant to be trans, and even, like, what it meant to be male, and, like, wasn't super good with that. But eventually, like, I figured it out, and for me, my transition has very much, like, been physical, so, like, changing my physical body has always been, like, a #1 priority for me, and now that my body's in a place where I feel pretty happy with it, I'm starting to spend more time to figure out, like, my actual gender identity and how I feel internally. But all my friends were great, I sort of intentionally lost contact with everyone from high school, so like I didn't have a big deal with that. But when I did reconnect with some of them, they were pretty cool with it. My brother was cool with it. My mom was cool with it. It took her like 3 days to just be like, okay, like it's gonna be fine, and then she was fine, and she's been super supportive and wonderful of me, and then of also of all my friends. And yeah, and my dad. It took my dad a while to come around. Like I said, he's a little bit more conservative, like a lot more conservative. But it took him like a year. And in that year, he, like, wouldn't use the right names, wouldn't use the right pronouns, was very much like, no, 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 and sort of, like, thought he knew what was best for me, and I was very angry about that. And then, eventually, like, after about a year, like, it started to click for him, and he started, you know, he switched over to the names and pronouns, he wasn't, like, supportive, but he also wasn't, like, you know, like, against it. And so now he's at a point where he's, like, okay with it, but he's still, like, he doesn't know how to talk about it, and it's kind of cute. But yeah, so, like, my whole family's cool now. His parents took a little bit of convincing, like, a year and a half, maybe 2 years worth of convincing, but, like, they got it. Yeah, so I've had actually a pretty good supportive time for most of the people I've come out to, so I've been very, very lucky in that regard. Yeah, hope you have a good day, I guess. Bye.